Dad, no, because then you can't jump after. And I said, how can I jump if I don't have muscles? And he looked at me and he said, you're always eating. I was hungry. I had my green apple and I was eating too much. So goalkeepers don't suffer.
I know. I shouldn't have said that too. Yeah.
Okay. See on the page that, especially when we go on social media and stuff, people look for quick fixes.
Yeah, right.
She said, why should we train our women as a 70-kilo white male?
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. What is something in our sport, okay, that people say privately that they're afraid to say publicly? Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm your host, Richard Bucciarelli, and today we did our first interview with Stephanie Öhrström. Stephanie is a former professional goalkeeper and current professional goalkeeper coach in Italy. We had an awesome discussion where we discussed the importance of fitness and strength and conditioning in soccer in general, as well as in women's soccer in particular, and we dispelled many of the myths around fitness training for women and female athletes. Find out what Stephanie has to say about youth development in the girls' game, fitness training for women, eating carbohydrates, body fat, and more. So Stephanie Öhrström, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
That's fine.
Good. All right. Well, welcome to Make It Make Sense.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, of course. Before we get started with sort of the main topic that we're going to discuss today, I wanted to start just by asking you, to please introduce yourself, a little bit maybe of your background, of course, your professional background, but your background in sport as a player, coach, and then I can talk a little bit about how we met.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of take it from there in terms of what we're actually going to talk about today.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm Stephanie Öhrström. I'm Swedish, born and raised in Sweden. I started my football career when I was 5 years old, playing with my cousins, and never stopped. Then I played for some clubs in Sweden. Then one day I got a message from Italy asking if I wanted to come and play for Verona. I didn't know the Italian football very well, so I went over here for a week. The level was not that high. The trainings, well, it was still like very behind because Sweden in that time was one of the best leagues in the world.
Right. Yeah.
But I wanted to play a lot of games. I knew that I was going to play a lot of games and that the team had some problem in that period. So I was going to have a lot to do during the games. So I said, look, okay, this was in December, so in the middle of the Italian season. So I said, okay, I will try it. If I don't like it, in 6 months, I'm in Sweden again. 17 years later, I'm still there.
So just to be clear, you did like it then, because took you 17 years to decide.
Yeah, no, it's been I always say that it's been a real, it's been a good 17 years, because it's been every year something became better.
Right.
And that's what I like. It's been a really big journey, which has been really fun to be part of. It feels like in some way in my small world has helped in my way. I came again from Sweden, where it was very developed. It was more tension, and so I could show the girls what could be improved and stuff like that. So yeah, then after 6 months, I was saying, okay, the level is still not the best. But 6 months, I started to learn the language. It was another way to play, so I was very happy with my 6 months playing. Mm-hmm. But I also knew that I could do better, because now I started to feel home.
Right.
So one more year, and 17 years later, I was there with 5.5 years in Verona. Then 5 years in Florence, I played with Fiorentina, and that was when the time that everything started to switch, because Fiorentina was the first men's team that took the women's
Started the women's program, right? Yeah,
so
right.
that was like really like started to get. We weren't a professional league yet, but we were in a professional club. So I stayed there for 5 years. Then I was one year in Lazio, and then I did the bold move to the other team.
To the rivals.
And I ended my 2 years, like the career in Roma.
Roma, right? Yeah. And I guess at that point, then we're talking, Italy had transitioned more into professional, being more professional in the women's game and all that, right? Yeah.
A lot, and it's been really fun to be on that journey.
Fantastic. And now, again, I'll get to how we met, right? But you've talked a lot about your background as a former player, and I say former because you are retired now. Yeah. Okay. But also now, and at some point you also became a coach.
Yeah.
So maybe take me through that.
I always like to coach. Also, in like when I was like the first time the federation in my region, the first time I worked for them, they called me and I was 14 years old, and they needed a coach because the goalkeeper coach was sick.
Right.
So I had to take the 13 years old, but I really liked it because I love talking about details. Also, when I was playing, like just discuss and talk about small what make a difference. And then also I worked on a college in Sweden. I started to coach in both men and women's, like boys and girls in Fiorentina. Then I stopped for a while, but so I always had my coaching background, and I did do my UEFA B license and also UEFA B goalkeeper license.
Right.
So it feels like I prepared. Then in the end of my last season as a player, I felt like, it was still fun to go to training, but I felt that I had done my part. I had won some titles. I didn't have any regrets. And Roma asked if I wanted to coach. Physically, I think I could have played some more years because I've been very lucky during my career. I have had very few injuries.
I definitely want to talk to you more about that. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But I just felt like it was a good time. So I started to coach.
Awesome. Yeah. And at the moment now, of course, you're still coaching, and I want to, perhaps we can sort of just, transition the discussion quickly into how we met. And funny enough, we met in a cafe in Rome.
Exactly.
Through a mutual friend of ours who's sort of a facilitator with players and coaches, and of course works in Italy in Toronto. And I was there doing some work in Italy, and we met and we connected there. And I thought it's funny because I remember that we did have a brief discussion there about women's football, soccer, right? We had a brief discussion about strength and conditioning in women's football, and there's a couple of things that you told me about your experience that really stuck in my mind, and partially because I've had my own background working in women's football as a strength and conditioning coach, and in fact some of the things you said reminded me of other experiences that I've had with players and other coaches and all that, and so that's why I thought that you would be a perfect guest to talk more about that here.
Yeah.
So I'm just obviously really happy that you're here, and hopefully we can get into it a bit more. And in fact, let's go right into kind of the main topic that I'd like to pick your brain about, really, which is strength and conditioning in football in general, and then in women's football in particular.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got my opinions and my professional opinions and experience and background, but you've been in it as a player at the highest level. Okay, and I know you spoke a little quickly about it, but I want to be clear, anyone who's watching or listening, that we're talking about women's Serie A, so the highest level in Italy, and you came from Sweden, which has also historically been a country in the women's side for sure, right? And you came to Italy at the time when Italy, was developing and became also maybe not a top country yet, but a strong one, right? And
right tracks.
and we know that Italy, with all the history that they have, notwithstanding the last few years here, or a few disappointments not qualifying for the World Cup, but Italy is has good coaching, and Italy has good training methodology. So it's not surprising that when they when the clubs in Italy start women's programs, that they're going to attract very good players, and they're going to also develop and improve those players with good coaching and professionalism and money. And so you played at a high level, okay, and you coached at a high level, of course. So I want to ask you, let's say, first of all, in your own professional opinion, how important is strength and conditioning for football? And then specifically, how important is it for women's football?
Well, I think it's very important for both. I mean, there's a lot of training going on, a lot of games. Nowadays, you also see, like, you have the league, you have the cups, you have the super cups, you have, if you're lucky, you have the Champions League, and you have then some has the national team. So you need to be fit, you need to be prepared to recover really quick, and just there's a lot of injuries going on, and I think that strength and conditioning, I think that's the basic thing you need to have, the base to be at that high level.
Right, and so we've got kind of that foundational idea that strength and conditioning and physical training is mandatory, basically, right? It's required, it's not optional. And now, let's say a little more specifically, let's say training with weights, and I'm gonna throw in there not just weights, but training with weights that are heavy enough to stimulate adaptations in the muscle, okay? And because anyone can pick up a 2 or 3 kilogram dumbbell, and you can call that weight training, but that's not really weight training.
Obviously, you need to know what am I training for?
Right.
I think that you need to go. You can't say this is how men is training. This is how women should train, because everyone is built different.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't built like my colleague in the goal.
Right.
And also like different positions. Me as a goalkeeper, you can't train. Yes, you do have the basic stuff, but you need to go for the specific stuff. I'm not running for 90 minutes. I don't do that kind of change of direction as an
outfield player would do, right? Yeah, not even close.
They don't jump as we do.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be very specific, I think. And also, have you had injuries in the past? Do we need to do something for that? Do we need to work extra on something? So I think that you need to be really specific when you come up to higher levels.
Sure, yeah, and part of that, let's say, applying that principle of specificity, that's what we call it, the idea that you train specific to your sport, specific to your position, specific to...
Sailor, that had the SAID, special adaptation.
Specific adaptation to impose demands.
Exactly.
See,
so
you know your stuff.
You work you work on what you get good at what you work on.
You adapt specifically to what the demands were that you did for training, and the idea is to try to target. Then you need to know what the demands are, so you can target your training.
And then, if we just talk about women's football, we know how many ACL injuries there are, more than men, because the women we have wider hips.
You got it.
So they get another angle on our knees. So that's also get more like crucial.
It's an area that's at risk more, and so I go back to this concept. And the reason I wanted to ask you about weight training, I'll get into your personal experiences in a few minutes, maybe. But before that, so clearly, if we apply that that principle of specificity, we would say, okay, in women's football, there is obviously a very high demand placed on on the muscles.
Yeah.
Muscles need to be strong. They need to be able to produce a high force. They also need to be able to produce power, so
Yeah.
force applied quickly. You need sprinting, jumping, etc. Goalkeepers, as even more specifically, right? If we wanted to
Yeah.
talk about what goalkeepers need, you said it. They don't need to run nearly as much, but they definitely need a lot of attention placed on
Explosivity.
strength, power, explosive ability, agility, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And so, I want to ask you, I think I know the answer, but I want to, make sure everyone who's watching kind of, can you develop and maximize those qualities without lifting heavy weights, do you think? Is it possible?
I think you can have some basic stuff, but if you want to take it to the next level, I don't think so.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, in the end,
you need to find your level.
The ability to run fast, jump
Yeah.
high, and the movements that goalkeepers have to do, the diving and
Yeah.
those kind of things. Without the ability to produce a high amount of force into the ground quickly,
Yeah.
You can't optimize those qualities. So can you train them without weights? Maybe you can improve your technique and your mechanics and other things. But
especially when you do explosive things.
yeah.
After a while, it can also be one day I'm more tired. So
Sure.
if I start to do the exercises more slow, okay, I go away from the specifics.
Right. Yeah.
Because today, okay, I'm a little bit tired today. It's been a lot of games, okay, maybe I need to do 2 reps instead of 10.
Right. Yeah.
But at least those 2 are very explosive.
They have to be
Yeah.
at the right
And then,
intensity.
especially in Lazio, we did use the sensors on the weights.
Accelerometers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I
Cool.
really
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then
The velocity-based
you
training.
saw-
Yeah.
So okay, can you do 8 on this speed?
Right.
No. After 4, I needed to stop. Then I can do it on 8. Okay. Then I can take some more weights.
Right.
So I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, and just to be clear,
Training.
you're talking about so there are accelerometers which can measure changes in velocity, and so if you can put something like that on a barbell, which is a fixed weight, and the only way you move it is when you lift. Essentially, you're measuring the acceleration of the weight.
Yeah.
And it's you that's producing that acceleration. So if the acceleration or the change in velocity starts to decrease a bit, well, that might be a sign that, there's some fatigue or, and so you can kind of hit targets in terms of, again, not just the weight that you lift, but, how quickly did you lift it? And if the objective of training in that case is to do something more powerful or more explosive, then hitting that higher velocity helps. But if the objective was just to build force or to build strength, then you can do it slower and all of that. And, again, I kind of, I led you with this question is that when we at its basic level, certainly for football, right? Certainly for women's football, and then of course for goalkeepers in women's football, well, heavy strength training, it increases the amount of force that your muscles can produce, and power and speed and all of those are directly related to force. So without developing the ability to increase force and maximizing that ability, you can't maximize those other qualities. You can train them maybe, but you can't maximize them. So, again, I think we agree on that, right? That weight training is like a mandatory, or should be, right? It's impossible to optimize the development of female players and certainly of female goalkeepers without doing that type of training. But
100%.
But despite it's almost like common knowledge. I mean, I want to make it make sense now. Yeah,
it's logical.
It's physics. Yeah. But the reason I say this is I want to try to make it make sense and see if you can. This was not your experience with some of the strength and conditioning coaches in Italy, and that's, in fact, that was the little thing that we talked about when we met at the cafe there. That I just wanted to ask you, so what was your experience in Italy?
Well, again, I came from Sweden, where the football was quite far ahead, and we were a lot in the gym. Don't ask me, I don't remember. I do remember what we did, and it was still like 17 years ago, so it has developed.
Sure, it's evolved since then, probably, but yeah.
but used to be in the gym. Came to Italy and we didn't do gym. We did some like abs and stuff with the physio, the strength and conditioning coach. So I lived on the same street as our clubhouse, and that was also a gym. So I said to the coach, the strength coach, I said, okay, can I go to the gym, because I would like to do some weights. And like I wanted to do my squats. I remember we did the snatches and stuff like that.
Sure.
But my squats, I wanted to get in with that. And he said, no, you can't go to the gym. And I was like, why? Because he asked, what are you doing? Yeah, I do my squats and do this and that. No, because then you can't jump after. And I said, how can I jump if I don't have muscle?
And just to be clear, how old were you at this time?
22.
So, on the younger end, kind of a new player, a new environment, and it's like you are explaining the physics to the expert. I mean,
I don't know. He came from cycling and dancing, so maybe that's another kind of sport that demands other kind of muscles, and as we said before. So then that I went there without him knowing it.
Like in secret. Right, you snuck into the gym and you did your squats.
I did my squat.
You didn't get in trouble for it? No.
We didn't know it, but and it was so focused on. When I came there, I was almost shocked because the girls are a lot of younger too, like 18, 17-year-old. After the training, they could go to him and they said, can you just feel on my, like touch my belly,
body fat,
if this is okay? And he was like, yes, maybe a little bit. And then he saw me and that was okay. And I came with my green apple after the training.
Oh, right,
and he looked at me and he said, you're always eating. And there I was like 2 hours, because in Italy you always that's the minimum. And I was hungry. I had my green apple and I was eating too much.
A little bit of carbohydrates after the training. And imagine it's a fruit. It's not a candy bar.
And I mean, it's not strange that if some girls had trouble, because if someone is touching your belly all the time, young girls we're talking about.
There's a risk of even like a kind of an eating disorder kind of thing. It's very strange. I mean, I like strange in the sense that again, an expert in fitness, and even stranger to me. I mean, I have an Italian background. I know that some of the best sports scientists in the world work in Italy. There's top researchers, and of course, in fact, funny, I know that you mentioned this particular coach was working in cycling, and Italy, aside from the doping, which they do have a good track record for that, let's say, but Italians, we're some of the best in the world in sports science for cycling and other endurance sports, but also for football. There are, and sometimes I think maybe this is where I want to try to make it make sense. Is the science. It gets a little bit lost in translation or applied incorrectly. And we spoke about that, the SAID principle, or the principle of specificity, which is, SAID is an acronym, specific adaptations to imposed demands. And cycling or any other endurance sport, in fact, it kind of makes sense for athletes in those sports to be a little bit more obsessed about how heavy they are, because essentially there are these sort of strength to body weight ratio or power to body weight ratio where they have to compete for hours and hours over multiple days. The truth is, if you do lose a little bit of weight, you probably will play a lot or perform rather a lot better. And I think there are limits to that where that is true in soccer too. But certainly going and pinching body fat every day and checking the scale every day seems very excessive to me.
We're talking about 17 years.
Ago.
So
I'm good
at that kind of like more good, like people get in, but also like the food stuff. A little bit maybe a sidetrack, but again they didn't want us to eat. I asked once. Before a game, I was hungry, so I asked for a second
serving,
like one refill, and they said no. And before, it's been like a few years before I went to Italy, we did a research with the hospital with my club in Sweden, So we did some tests, and for 1 week we had to measure everything, write down everything we ate, and we had it measured everything.
Right.
And I thought, okay, I'm a goalkeeper. I don't run as much as that one, so I thought, okay, maybe I'm not like using that much of energy. Every day I used 3,600 calories.
It's funny.
I was not even 20 years old.
Right. And I'm not surprised, by the way, because we do this stuff, we measure it, and
I did eat a lot for a normal person, because I think I ate like 2,800, but that meant that I was.
You're in a deficit.
Oh, yeah.
Did you lose weight? Like why?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because I said I'm almost 1,000 calories lower than
the expenditure. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
How can I not be a skeleton? And they explained to me, well, if you're not eating enough, your body thinks that soon there will not be no food anymore, so it keeps everything, like all the fat and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't lose weight.
It's that's a very interesting example.
This was a professional team,
right?
Like we were first or second team, and there was just one player we were like 25 in the team. One player that ate enough. That was the one that had an ACL injury. Everyone else ate too
little.
Yeah.
And,
so
I hope you didn't get a bunch of people assuming correlation and causation there and saying, well, she's eating too much and that's why she got hurt. They didn't say that, right? No, okay, good. Yeah, because I got more stuff to criticize.
Not eating, as in Italy, the first years in Italy, they said no to eating.
Right. Yeah.
We could like with that team, we couldn't go up until we finished our
Look at that. That's what a contrast, eh? Yeah.
But again, no, don't want to talk bad about Italy. It's just 17 years ago, a lot of things has happened, a lot of improvements.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. And it was just a shock.
Truth be told, obviously there's lots of really smart, really competent, really capable people working in coaching and sports science all over the world. And, it's obviously we can't generalize. Also, things were different, as you said, 15, 20 years ago, maybe than they are now. And everyone is learning more. And also, I think there's still a need for more applied research. I think we talked offline a little bit about that, about how much more research probably should be done in sport. How much research should be done, not just in sport, but in female sport and, all of that. And so those are, it can evolve more and it can get better.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting contrast that you can go in, or in a similar time period, two different environments. One is telling you, hey, you're not eating enough.
Yeah.
And this is going to affect your health and your performance in the other. And another environment is telling you, hey, you're eating too much.
Yeah.
And not only that, but like, what are you doing going to the gym? It's going to make you heavy. It's going to slow you down. And I want to just move quickly into a little more about the concept of that the weight training is going to slow you down. I think that's what you were told.
Yeah.
There's also, along that same line, there's this misconception that weight training is kind of like the wrong way for a football player to train. I think I mentioned to you briefly, but it depends. We're all manipulated by our own algorithms, and so I think because of all the work that I do, I'm constantly seeing, like on Instagram and all these videos of, and I'm talking usually more on the men's side, right? But Barcelona, Liverpool, some of the best clubs, the ones with the top everything, the best facilities, the most staff, the most experienced staff. Not all of them. This is a bit of a generalization, but I do see a lot where, instead of the players just squatting or deadlifting or bench pressing or throwing a medicine ball, kind of like the traditional strength and conditioning work. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but they're like standing on one leg with one arm holding a band here, and they're kind of, pushing the band while they're making a pass. You know what I'm talking about, right? All these sort of, I would just call them at best unconventional.
Yeah.
strength and conditioning methods. And often, and again, you can go down the rabbit hole. I haven't quite gone down it. I don't know if I want to, because I might, it might make me lose my mind. But, there's this whole almost ecosystem around, some people call it fascial training. Some people are calling it, like, I don't know, functional. There's that word. There's all these sort of weird, terms and terminology that's used. But I would just, to simplify it, I would say there's like a lot of even top level people in our sport are going completely away from traditional, conventional strength and conditioning, which I know and we know works.
Yeah.
And they're going away from that. And they're doing all this other stuff. So am I wrong to assume, like, I know you had that experience in Italy, can you make sense of that? Like,
yeah, I think I'm a little bit Swedish, that I something in the middle.
You're trying to find a compromise. You want to be pragmatic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but I do think that you can't go away from the basics.
Yeah.
And then if we need to go balance and stuff, I think that's important too, and plyometrics and stuff like that. But don't go away from the basics.
And the basics are?
Like the weight training.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm 100% with you.
Here's a question, and maybe I know the answer, but I want to, isn't plyometric exercise, and also I know you mentioned sort of Olympic lifting, snatch, power cleans, things like that. Aren't those also basic exercises too, fundamentally? I mean, some of the let's say the initial science and research into some of those types of training. Plyometrics is one, and just again, people are listening. Plyometric exercise is basically exercise where you do different types of bounding, repeated jumps, things like that, where the focus isn't so much on the jump but on the landing and making the landing faster. And so it's you can do it with resistance, but your body weight often is enough resistance. And the idea with plyometric exercise is to try to make the stretch and then the shortening of muscles and tendons a bit more efficient.
Yeah.
Okay. You know that it this training originated in the Soviet Union very soon after the Second World War. Like there's books and articles that were written in the the 60s and 70s, and it's been researched for 50, 60, 70 years. So it is also sort of a traditional method of training, right? So it's like, I like what you said. I think you can't go away too much from the basics, even though maybe there's a place for unconventional stuff. But I find often, I don't know if it's just human nature maybe, but that sometimes people it's like we want to do something new or different specifically because it's different.
Yeah. And I do also think that, especially when we go on social media and stuff, people look for quick fixes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, I've been there too. Okay, I want to have that. I will never have it.
But without the work, though, right?
Yeah. And I see this. Okay, no, that looks really heavy. Maybe I can find another way. I've been there too, because you sit there and scroll. But in the end, you need to do the work.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's like if I told you, you can have a body like this, muscles, this, that, whatever, but you can do it without lifting weights. Yeah, that sounds great, right? Yeah.
I wish.
But there's no shortcuts. And I mean, again, you've been an athlete and you're a coach, and as I do, that of course with training, I mean, there are no shortcuts, and
except for all obviously the physical part, I find that also when I do feel fit, my mind is all different. I went onto the pitch, like a different player.
Right.
It could be like from one week to another, and obviously it's not like, okay, today this week I've been training a little bit less in the gym. It's not that I lost my power, but again, maybe I didn't feel that confident. But when I felt fit, I was 1 inch taller. Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that, because I've been doing this in my career now for so long, and I've talked to so many players and even coaches about it. And often, like, the way that I explain it is that
your physical fitness is something which is just about 100% under your own control.
Yeah.
And so, if you do the work, you don't take shortcuts, and whatever it is, if it's a goalkeeper, it's going to be a little more on the strength and power side.
Yeah.
If it's an outfield player, you need both. You need the conditioning and the running work, and everybody needs, to. But if you've taken care of it, there is, of course, this confidence that like you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And I think again, sometimes I gravitate more towards outfield players because I know how much they have to run and how much they have to suffer sometimes in games.
So goalkeepers don't suffer?
I know. I shouldn't have said that too.
Okay. See you on the pitch. 1 hour with the goalkeepers, and we see if you can go up from the
you're right.
floor.
Let me qualify what I said. They don't suffer. I don't think physically in games as much. I think they suffer mentally more. But there's often, and it's an interesting. It's an interesting discussion and whole coaching methodology around. Often you could be almost standing still for several minutes or just not doing much, and then immediately you have to perform. But back to the players, just the idea that knowing that you have to do that in a game and not having to worry about it because you know that you're prepared for it, to me is such an advantage. Yeah. And so and of course, okay, we can apply that to goalkeepers, and we can say, okay, there's certain jumps, dives, saves, explosive actions that you have to do, and you don't have to worry about it. Like you physically, you can do it. Of course, there's the other side of it, the tactics, the positioning. That's different. No, but if you're going into it physically prepared.
Yeah. At least I don't think that you're protected 100% because the game is getting quicker. Yeah. I do think that you need to be lucky too. I don't know. I know that maybe that's not what you want to hear, but okay. I mean, how you're done. Obviously, I did my work. I wasn't the fittest in the team.
Right.
I always worked hard. It's not that I didn't do anything. I've always worked really hard, but there were people even fitter than me that got hurt. I've been very lucky, I think, because I had a fractured foot once. That's basically
the only injury.
More or less, that kept me away from the pitch for a few months. And I do think that's a little bit of how do you say the construction? How do you say the
you're talking more mechanical kind of you had
obviously. So you have a small part is that, but obviously then you need to. But again, also now I continue to see ACL injuries and stuff like that, and I do think I think strength and conditioning is like a huge part of it. Mm-hmm. But also, the game is quicker now.
Right.
Everything goes faster. You have a lot of teams work on turf.
Right. Yeah.
I do think that's a
factor too. Yeah.
Because how many bad pitches did we grow up on, and you had to your body adapted to those kind of things. Now a lot of people work on turf that the pitch is perfect, and then
no bumps,
one snitch and you get hurt. So I think it has a lot of factors. But again,
the turf, it's interesting. I would argue that you could apply the same said principle there, right? Yeah, so if you grew up playing on whatever it was, bumpy dirt, grass, that, whatever, yes, it's unstable. Yes, there's risk of injury, whatever. But of course, now your body adapts to that and is prepared. And so, we've almost taken that away. And that's an interesting conversation, almost for another day. But it's like how we've almost, again, we've kind of gravitated from an environment that was, had its flaws probably, but was a little more relevant to the real world. Yeah. And now we're making everything literally artificial, right? Yeah. Artificial turf, and that's a challenge for sure for athletes. There's two things that you said as we were talking that I kind of want to dive into a bit more if you're okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first is, because you mentioned it again now, is about sort of the game is getting faster. The physical and physiological demands of the game are higher.
Yeah.
Okay. And at the same time, specifically for women, there is a higher risk of injury, specifically a higher risk of injury to the knees. And here's what I want to say, first of all, before I ask my question is, when you say the game is getting faster and more demanding, I want to tell you that the yo-yo test, you know, everyone hates that test,
Yes.
but it's an excellent test to predict the capacity of a player to do high intensity running.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I know you've done that test. I'm sure you have. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm bringing back some trauma here, but
Yeah.
you know, I've conducted like over 20,000 of them. And you know, I started in women's soccer with the Canadian women's national teams around 2010, 2011. And so we're talking the fittest players in Canada. And Canada, you know, had a good women's team.
Yeah.
So I would argue, some of the fittest in the world that I worked with. And the standard used to be, back in 2008, 2009, 2010, on that test, used to be 16.1, stage 16.1. Close to the 1800 meters distance at high intensity. So if the players weren't getting that score, they were kind of considered unfit. Do you know what the standard is now for the Canadian, or let's say women's national teams, and like for that same test?
I would say lower.
No.
Higher.
Oh, it's way higher.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking that maybe you work more with the ball, so you don't.
Well, yeah, no.
I mean, because before the conditioning training you ran
was
so maybe
was a
I
little
was
more
thinking,
school.
okay,
Yeah,
maybe
no.
you adapt on that.
No,
Okay.
yeah, no.
Oh, that's good.
In fact,
Positive.
Yeah. What's happened is that, and you know, it's training, it's nutrition, it's girls starting to play earlier, training more, all of it, you know, probably genetics, and there's lots of factors, but at the same time, so now, I mean, you wouldn't even dream of getting into a national team as an outfield player without a yo-yo score of 18, and most of the better players are getting a score of 19. Now, I just know the numbers that stage 19 on that test is where you cross the threshold into 2,000 meters of high intensity running. So they're, you know, almost a kilometer more of high intensity running within about 20 years. So the game is the players are faster. They're doing way more fast running.
Yeah.
And of course the demands are higher. And at the same time, you know, we keep looking at these injury rates, and they're either the same as they were 20 years ago, or they're getting higher.
Yeah.
So we've got the game getting more demanding, injury rates, and I'm saying specifically the tearing of the anterior cruciate ligament. That's the ligament that prevents the tibia from sliding forward when you stop, decelerate, you know, change direction, that kind of thing. Women are at higher risk of that because after puberty, the hips go wider, the knees go in, and well, you know, to the extent that it's preventable, what's the antidote to preventing those injuries? It's strength and conditioning training. It's specifically training the hamstrings, training the muscles on the outside of the hip to externally rotate, the core, obviously fitness training and conditioning so that players are fit, because if they're not fit, they get tired, and then they're more likely to get hurt. And then you need to train, you need to learn how to tackle and the technical side of things too.
They're quicker also, and so now you need to do a change of direction with a higher load. When I see someone getting hurt by themselves, when I say, okay,
the non-contact
this
injuries.
is bad. Because if someone kicks you, okay, obviously you can tear your ACL also for that.
Yeah.
But mostly it's not that kind of situations. We had a bad year last year with our team. We had like 3 ACLs in the club, like
this is
15 and
Roma.
17. Yeah. And
3.
it was like by themselves. And also
all 3 were non-contact.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just a few weeks ago, we had a girl. She was running by herself, stopped, and just fell down. And she's not someone that is crying. She's fit. Went there. Her kneecap was here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a devastating injury, and I mean, on the positive side, with the advances in surgery and just our knowledge of how to rehab, you know, it's not a career-ending injury anymore.
No, and
like it used to
now
be,
you
but
have a lot of like the facilities are way better.
So you can recover from it, right? But of course, even better than recovering from it is to try to prevent it.
Young girls.
Yeah. So I guess I have a lot of preamble here, but my question is, you know, outside of the fact that we know strength and conditioning is important, strength training is important. Do you think that these injuries can be prevented in elite women's football? And if so, how?
Well, again, as we talked about, I do believe that not 100%, but we can do a lot to prevent it. Like do the basics, do the weight training, do the small. Like it's not just the big muscle. We talk also about like the muscle that stabilizes the knee stuff, and just the overall fitness condition.
Yeah,
absolutely. No.
Any I'm just curious because I have a few of my own ideas, but let's say if we had to delve a little bit deeper into I don't know, the mechanical side of things, other than muscles being strong, you know, you mentioned, and it's true that in the non-contact injuries, they often happen when you're running in one direction and you have to stop to decelerate and then go, you know. So is there any type of training that you think is particularly useful other than lifting weights and explosive training, like, you know, training for that type of work? What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. No, I do think that like balance and stuff like this, and I don't know.
But
no,
Let me give you an idea of mine. That a couple of things that I see. First of all, it's much more common for female players in general, whatever. You know, if the ACL is going to go, it goes on the kicking leg. Okay.
Yeah.
Why? Because the kicking leg doesn't.
Weaker.
Yeah, it's weaker. Yeah. And why is it weaker?
Because my other foot that stands,
is stronger. Yeah. So the plant leg can get overused somehow. And again, I'm a little bit maybe generalizing when I say this, but I know this from, you know, working with the tens of thousands of players. The kicking leg, even the muscle isn't even as big. Like you can literally see it, right? Absolutely. You know, and of course it's not as strong and not as stable and all that. And so, you know, my idea, you know, and you're a professional, you tell me what you think, right? You know, could we address that by simply, I don't know if it's like forcing or, you know, to train with both feet at a young age? You know, what do you think about that?
When you come back from an ACL injury, I know that you can't come back and you do a lot of strength on that side. Yeah. But I know in Italy you can't go back until both sides are equal.
Yeah, or close to equal anyway. They may never be. Yeah, there's a range. It depends on the test.
So maybe if we can do some tests while before you get injured, so we have the right balance.
Screening is really useful for sure, and you know, I think there's probably a lot more work that can be done, you know, on the front end on the back end, let's say, before an athlete does get hurt, to try to prevent it. Yeah. My idea too is, even at its basic level with kids, train them to use both feet as like you may always have, and you know, you probably always will have, like if you had to take a goal kick or a free kick, or, you know, you're going to use your stronger leg no matter what, right? You know, but like in training with young children, you know, if they're exposed to, and again, this is why I say kind of forced to almost, to use both the same number of passes, strikes, dribbles, eventually, isn't it possible that they can, first of all, those strength ratios will be much closer. Exactly. And, you know, then maybe, the risk of injury might go down, right? Yeah. So
absolutely. But I think also, like, we talked a little bit about this before starting. Yeah. Start with the conditioning, also the technique with younger kids. Right. Because we were talking about this. A lot of people are afraid, okay, kids shouldn't be in the gym, they shouldn't be lifting. And obviously they're not like a 5-year-old that's going to be like
doing an Olympic lift over their head or whatever.
I was talking about my niece. She's 5 years old. She loves going to the gym with my sister, and she does, like, she's strong, and she does like the technique is good. So instead of starting going into the gym for the first time when you're 14 years old,
Right.
and you do some squats and your knees are going in like this, learn with light weights, learn the technique from the beginning, and I think that we can get rid of a lot of stupid injuries.
Right, and it's such a good point that that there is it's like another myth. Like, not only are there lots of people in our sport that think you shouldn't lift weights at all,
Yeah.
right? So that hopefully we can
Yeah.
put that myth to bed. There's also a lot of people in our sport that think, well, lift weights, but not until I don't know, not until puberty, not until ninth grade, not until age 16, 18.
Yeah.
There's all these, and they're very arbitrary, these like thresholds. Okay, and the problem with thresholds is, first of all, they're so general that it's almost impossible to take any meaning from them. So puberty, well, boys and girls hit puberty about 2 years apart. So first of all, right off the bat, if you use puberty as 13 or something, it's too late, for girls for sure. Now, then we say ninth grade or some age, or but when you start to look at the developmental age of youth athletes, you see, well, yeah, they can all be born in the same year or even within a small range of time. So chronologically, they're almost the same.
Yeah.
But developmentally, they could be 2 or 3 years apart. And of course, that affects, even if we want to say, don't lift weights until X year or day or whatever, at least we could customize that based on developmental age. And we don't do any of that. Yeah. We don't enforce or reinforce the idea of training with both feet.
Yeah.
We're scared of strength training. Yeah. Even at the highest level, as I said, you get the, standing on one leg on a Bosu ball, pushing a TheraBand, rather than just
but I told you, my niece, again, she's 5 years old. The other week, they went to the fire station, the fire workers. Yeah. It was an open day, and they had the rowing machine.
Right, yeah.
And she came, so every kid wanted to try it. Yeah. And my kid came and she said to my sister, hey, the girl in front of me, she was older than me, but the technique was done, and it was not good. Like she just used her arms, she didn't use her legs. And my niece is 5 years old
and already understands the idea of summation forces, using your legs before
just
your upper body. Yeah.
Teach them when they're young, because they do it because they like it.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah.
So I wanted to switch gears a bit, and in fact, again, another thing that you said, I hadn't even planned to ask you about this, but as you're telling your story, something kind of stuck in my mind that I thought, oh, I have to remember to ask her about this, which is, so you were playing in Sweden and got to a pretty high level there.
Yeah.
And at the time in Sweden, I know this because I worked in the women's game before I worked in the men's game at a high level. So we all knew here in Canada that Sweden was one of the countries which was one of the best in the world on the women's side, certainly by the early 2000s, right? And so you were identified and sort of scouted and asked to come to Italy. And, of course, Italy had a great men's program at that time. And I don't know that you didn't say the year, but I'm doing the math and I'm thinking this must have been around the mid-2000s.
2010.
Oh, okay. So, Italy's coming off of, winning the World Cup and some of the best club teams in the world on the men's side.
Yeah.
But on the women's side, like just starting almost, right? And so I don't know how else to say this. Why did you leave?
Well, I mean, the last year in Sweden wasn't the best. I didn't play as much as I had hoped for.
Yeah.
So when they called, I knew that I was going to have an important role in the team.
In Italy?
Yes.
Right, okay.
And play a lot of games.
Right.
I thought, okay, maybe the training isn't that great, but I need games.
Right.
Because that year been a bit less. And also for the first time, I could just play football, because I did get, obviously it's not much money if you compare to the men's, but
okay.
for the first time, because in Sweden I worked part-time.
Yeah.
Also last year, some nights and stuff like that. You need
You make ends meet. Yeah.
manage,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and you learn, you adapt. uh, but they said we have the apartment, you will have this salary, and I thought, okay, for the first time I can do just that, and I was interested to see what I could do of that opportunity to
Right.
just play football.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well,
so yeah,
I wouldn't
why.
question it at all to think it
No,
was
no.
a wrong move, but it's just that, again, as you said it, I was thinking,
it was
yeah. But
good question.
and it's an interesting point, I think, just about the game in general, that sometimes maybe people who aren't in it anyway, and of course, the more knowledgeable you are, the less you have these misconceptions. But from the perspective of, as I said, someone that was in the game, but I didn't know your situation or what was happening in Italy. We would often assume that, well, Sweden has a very strong national team. Sweden produces some of the top players.
No,
why wouldn't you want to stay in Sweden?
Exactly.
But sometimes, hey, there's a better opportunity, a little more money, a little more in another country like Italy that didn't, hadn't developed at the same rate in the women's game.
And again, after I saw that every year became better, so like better condition. When I came to Italy, you could just have one foreign player in the team.
Right. Yeah.
So that was also something.
You were the one.
I was the one,
yeah.
and they were like trying to find Canadians that with or Brazilian.
Oh, you mean with a dual citizenship? Yeah. There's lots of those.
We heard that you have a grandmother that was Italian, so obviously we had a lot of Canadians, Brazilians. We had a Brazilian player, but we had Canadians coming over for trial and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The second year you could have two foreign players, then three, and so it happened a lot.
Sure.
And then I'm also someone, I get attached. Sometimes I haven't always followed maybe the best professional way.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe sometimes it's been okay, if I leave, I won't be seeing those guys anymore. Those people almost became as my family.
Country,
so
that city.
I follow a lot, my heart a lot too.
Right. Yeah. Well.
And I mean, you can right or wrong. Everyone is different, but I think I've done quite well anyway. So
I think so. Yeah. And often it's funny because you could always second guess the choices you make, but then you are where you are and you are who you are now.
I also think that I believe that if you're feeling well outside of the pitch, you perform on the pitch too. So I do think it's like a whole ecosystem.
Sure.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah. I want to play devil's advocate for a minute, and I think I will. I'll briefly introduce just a story that maybe hopefully brings this out. But in one of the previous professional clubs that I worked with, there was a head coach who was he was from Portugal, and he was a real student of tactical periodization.
Yeah.
And tactical periodization, just to simplify it, it's I know you know what it is, but the idea that sort of all of the training, including physical training that the team does, is not just supposed to be sort of specific to football, but it's supposed to be specific to the tactics and how the coach wants the team to play.
Yeah.
And so in the more extreme form of it, it's like, there isn't really, there's almost no actual fitness training, no gym, no whatever. And then even on the field, the physical work that's done outside of warm-ups and all that it's really specific. It's like on the farthest possible side of being specific that you could be. And so anyway, I worked in this environment, and he was an awesome coach, a brilliant guy, but it was a real kind of, I guess, taking me out of my comfort zone kind of thing. But at the same time, the team did okay. Yeah. We didn't really, again, it's one sample and it's not it's only 1 year, but we didn't really have a lot of injuries. Physically, players performed well. And so to play devil's advocate, just, we've talked a lot about how important fitness is, how important strength and conditioning is, the demands of the women's game. Yeah. I think we kind of agree on all that. And, but again, is there any merit, first of all, to not like in general, not prioritizing fitness and strength and conditioning? Is there any merit to that? And then second, what about those more extreme? What about the tactical periodization methodology that just says, hey, you know, we're getting this all wrong. We need to focus on getting the players to do exactly what they need to do in the game. And, you know, what are your thoughts on that? Can you defend that at all, even if you don't agree with it completely?
I do think that I like I like the specification. Like, I do think that we can't train the whole team equal. I do believe that we need our bases, as we said before. You need the base of conditioning, training, strength and conditioning. But obviously, I can't do all the work that the outfield players do. I do think it's different to be a center back or
a winger,
and stuff like that. So I'm all for specific. That's when we're talking about details.
Right.
I am a firm believer that like the basic conditioning training is the key. But then again, if you have the, I don't know, that was 1 year, and maybe that would be the same results after 10 years. I don't know.
Yeah, it's. I think we shouldn't make assumptions that just because something was done in a certain way with a certain group or whatever that validates. Or sorry, something was done in a certain way. You got some results or success, and we didn't win the league, nothing like that. But like that doesn't necessarily mean that you got those results that you got from the training. And you know.
I can just say when I came to Italy from Sweden, I had my strength background. I had my goalkeeper coach, like how our technique. It was a little bit different than the Italian one, and I came since the soccer and the football was. Like in Sweden was better, like the women's soccer was better in Sweden at that point. I thought, okay, everything they do in Sweden, that's the right thing.
Right. That was your paradigm there. Yeah.
But again, I was young, and then after a few years, also now we're just talking about like the technique and stuff, and I was very like this. Yeah. Okay, this is how you do it. This is how you should do it. But I don't know, maybe it was experience. I got some experience. I got older. I just find that, okay, try everything, like without exaggerating. Yeah. But now we're talking about what I was thinking about techniques and stuff. Yeah. The more you know, the bigger catalog you have to use. I can try, I became more open to try new things. And I also say when I train in kids, everyone is different. I will show you how to do this and also that.
Right.
And then maybe you can use both. Maybe this technique, it's not for you. Okay, you tried it. If it's not for you, that's fine. You need to feel comfortable. And if I learn how to do 2 different techniques, okay, I go to on the pitch and I feel that, okay, in this situation, I could use that technique, but in another situation, I used another technique. So I became more open-minded.
Open-minded,
and
right?
Maybe that's the stuff with the conditioning.
I agree. I think it's probably the right philosophy. And the truth is, I know you mentioned, let's say back when you started and you were kind of, I know you didn't use this word, but stubborn, let's say, maybe you were kind of closed-minded. And I mean, I'm very guilty of that too, like of being that way. But the truth is that, and again, think of a lot of times when we're trying to do stuff that's informed by science, the science, the research, the literature that's out there is often not done, I think I touched on this before, but it's not done with athletes. Yeah. It's done with like men and women who are fit maybe, but they're not athletes. And then even if it's done with athletes, it's done with, the cyclists and the runners, not football players. Yeah. It's done much more with men than with women. Yeah. It's not done with youth. Often, even if it is done with men and it's soccer or football, it's not the highest level because those, they're very picky about what they allow.
And we talked about this before, like 6%, just 6% of all the studies is for women's like specific training.
And we're talking about, of all the research that's done
Yes.
in athletes,
Yeah.
only 6% is female
Yeah.
athlete. There you go.
So you have
Yeah.
Michelle Kang, that is
Right. Yeah.
the owner of Washington Spirit. You have the London City Lionesses and
Lionesses,
a few more clubs, and pushing for women's football and for some science on that. Because I read the other day, she said, why should we train our women as a 70-kilo white male?
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And
That's right about that. We need more science. We need more knowledge about how the women's body works. And hey, we haven't talked about it, but I mean, when you're 14, 13, 15, I don't know, girls get their period.
of course.
And that's a big factor too.
Yep.
We know, science said it, we have these windows in all, like during the month, that we are weaker.
And in fact, even the ligaments. I mean, we're talking about the cruciate ligament, ironically, right? Like, you get in the luteal phase. Okay,
Yeah.
There's a little bit more estrogen, and there's a little more laxity. So what makes a ligament function is, we think tightness is a bad thing, but a little bit of tightness or stiffness in ligaments is important, because if they're too loose, well, then they can't, stretch and return to their original shape. They're a little bit loose. I mean, laxity is the word. You're more vulnerable to injury in that case. Yeah. That's another layer.
There's so many parts, and we saw, like in with Fiorentina, we did it with Lazio and Roma. We had our apps every morning. We were tracking that, and then they were like, okay, we know that in these days maybe Stephanie's a little bit more tired, and I don't know exactly how they.
You can adjust the training load. You can do.
I went to the training, but
right. Yeah.
But for sure we can do more about these researchers. But there is a knowledge about.
And also, of course, since if we just want to be stubborn and say, well, we have to do what the science says.
Yeah.
Sometimes the science, in fact, isn't really relevant to your particular group that you're working with. And I'll ask you this then: if you did anything as a player, as a coach, like you did something that you kind of knew was not supported by evidence, okay?
Yeah.
But it worked. It worked. Yeah. Would you keep doing it?
Well, if it worked, why not? And again, maybe it works for me, but not for you.
Maybe not, but yeah, and at some level, like I think coaches and fitness coaches and like they need to have that flexibility, that open-mindedness, as you say, because
I think it's very easy to get. We can call it stubborn.
Yeah.
I've read about this. This works. I've seen it. Yeah, maybe. But maybe there are other ways too.
Yeah, and. I'll tell you, just on the academic side of things, like a good scientist and a good research paper, even in order to be accepted for publication, at the end of your paper, you need to list the limitations.
Yeah.
And so that means that there's limitations to every scientific finding.
Yeah.
And in fact, usually what we report is we report on findings that have a 5% or less chance that the finding was due to, error rather than an actual effect.
Okay.
You ever seen the p-value? P equals or less than or equal to 0. That's what that means.
Okay.
That means you can be so if your p-value is 0.05, that means that there's a 5% chance that your findings were due to error.
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes in medical research the standard is higher than that. It has to be a 0.02 or 0.01. But even on the academic side, all the researchers have to say, hey, we could be wrong.
Yeah.
We could be totally wrong about this. And I gave even a few examples of, we used to think that a yo-yo test of 16 was the best that a woman could do.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it was, and now we've got 14-year-old girls that are getting stage 18.2, 18.3, and so that's happening, right? So yeah.
But it's maybe we limit ourselves. Sometimes I read it, but I don't remember. It was in athletics. I don't remember if it was the record you came under, the first under, I don't, 10 seconds in somewhere. I don't
Oh, right.
I don't
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
what it was,
yeah.
but for all the years they didn't break that record.
Yeah.
One did it, and in the same year other
It
10, 100, I don't know exactly, but
many
you're
track
limited.
and field records are like that, and I mean I don't know if it was perhaps the idea of a 4-minute mile. Is that the one, or
Could
like
be,
yeah?
could be. I
So
really
yeah,
don't remember. But
I'm
yeah,
trying to. My memory's a little fuzzy on it too. I think it was a guy named Roger Bannister or something, an
could be
English
that
guy
one, yeah.
that ran a mile in less than 4 minutes.
Yeah.
It was thought to be impossible.
Yeah.
And I think after he did it, yeah, there's like so many people. And in fact, now you got. I mean, I don't even know the world record is like 3 minutes and 20 seconds. It's,
Yeah, but
I couldn't even do that on. I couldn't even do that on a bicycle, but I. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't want to definitely don't want to be too close-minded,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, you probably also don't want to tell all the female players not to lift weights
Sure.
and then pinch their body fat every day, correct?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I would say
We have to find a happy
yeah,
medium, right?
no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to, we're kind of close to wrapping things up, okay? And the first thing, it's about, this is, you can speak as a player,
Yeah.
coach, in any, sort of put on any hat that works for you. But what is something in our sport, okay, that people say privately that they're afraid to say publicly?
Wow. That was a hard question.
I know.
No, I don't know, because I mean, we talked about a lot of stuff right now, so I think that's a lot of things that we touch a lot of.
Yeah. I
things
mean,
that
maybe in the theme of our conversation, we could probably say that there may be coaches and people that know how important strength and conditioning is,
Yeah.
but because it's almost becoming popular to not do
Not
it,
to do it.
maybe you're getting another force pushing you to that side. I don't know. I mean, I personally, I find even at some of the highest levels here,
Yeah.
that is a challenge. Is that half of the time you end up trying to convince coaches, not so much players, because I actually think players get it,
Yeah.
but coaches who are a little more stubborn.
Yeah.
A lot of the work that a fitness coach or sports scientist ends up having to do
Yeah.
is to convince the coach that they need this, they need this.
I mean, maybe they're afraid because sometimes in some levels, maybe you don't have the time to have a lot of, like, how many training sessions you want. So maybe they're afraid to take away one day from the field to go to the gym.
Right.
So maybe like in our, like in the sports world, they're working because they make the results. If the team doesn't make results, the coach go away.
He's going to lose his
So
job.
maybe that could be a factor that, okay, we need to be tactical perfect. They're well trained, so we don't need to.
We'll
make
sacrifice
that.
the physical
Maybe,
part.
I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. And I guess I want to ask, the final question, just because I think, I mean, certainly in our business here, we're interacting with thousands of aspiring female players that, in fact, if they knew about you and that you played and you became a pro and you became a full-time pro in another country and now a professional coach, and that they would, if you asked them, they would say, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what advice do you give to players in general, but let's say younger female players in particular?
I think the basics of everything. Do the work. Like it's a lot of work behind. You don't get anything for free. Try to have fun while learning, because it's easier to learn and to get up in the morning if you like what you do. Study, watch a lot of well, in our case, football.
Right.
And again, I do think open-minded. Try stuff. Don't. I'm someone that I love discussions. Also, when I was playing, I loved having discussion with my coach or my teammates, because I do think that then you hear other opinions.
Right.
Sometimes you agree, sometimes you don't agree, and by this you just get more knowledge. So be curious.
Great advice. And yeah, and funny enough, you actually, I think you've convinced me that goalkeepers suffer more than I thought they did, right? So that's great. Yeah.
Yes.
I better not say that in public anymore.
Again,
But yeah.
we
Yeah.
we'll meet on the field and see if we get up in the morning.
You would make me suffer for sure. Yeah. But okay, so I think we can wrap this up. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come
Thank you
here,
for
and
having me.
yeah, I know you came all the way from Oakville.
Yeah.
So you know, I so appreciate having you as a guest here. I hope it was a good,
Yeah.
enjoyable experience for you
Absolutely.
too. And you know, people will watch, people will hopefully listen, and if they wanted to find you, to find out about you, whether that's social media, I don't know, Twitter, Instagram, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever you have, how can people find you if they want to find out more
Well,
about
I
you?
am on Instagram, Stephanie Öhrström, not the easiest name, but
Yeah.
you will find me. Not the most active one, but I'm there.
Okay, you're there. They can find you there.
And then you
and-
can find me in Rome.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so-
Just if you happen to be having
Yeah.
an espresso at 10 in the morning or something on a
Exactly.
beautiful day in Rome, you just
give me a call and find me over there. Hopefully, I come back next year in Canada. It's been really great. This was the first time.
Right. Yeah.
So I've had 1.5 week, really intense, but really nice. I really enjoyed Toronto. I had overall a really good experience. So I hope to come back.
Great. Yeah. And when you do, we'll bring you back on.
Yeah.
Make it make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. All right.